Good morning, it's Sunday, November 6th, 2011. This will be the pilot episode in my series of how to install Linux software and configure it. The goal of this series is going to be to make Linux software installs and configuration more approachable to the new users. I want to disprove that it's difficult to do this stuff. Most of it is not hard at all. Today's question was brought to us by Arbiter Odie from the Overclockers forums. His question was regarding setting up the Samba file server under Ubuntu server. So I've got my server up and running here. We're going to show you how to do that. I've already logged in as my regular user, Bob. I know, real creative, right? So we need to install it. I did not choose to install it during the initial install. It is an option during the server installation. However, we're going to assume that you didn't and you need to actually install it. So to do that, we're going to need to run sudo. Sudo is a program that lets us run other programs as a different user. In this case, we're not specifying a user, so it's going to default to root, because we need root access to be able to install this software. We're going to run sudo apt-get install Samba. It's now going to go off and do its thing. It's going to download all the files that it needs, its dependencies and all the files. It's going to unpack them and then put them exactly where they need to be. It's also going to set them up to run on boot and start the process using the default configuration. But we're going to need to change that configuration because it's not going to serve our purposes. Okay, Samba's now installed. Now we need to configure it. To do that, we're going to invoke sudo again because we need to modify the configuration file. The configuration file can't be edited by a normal user. So we're going to use sudo and then nano. Nano is my preferred, just quick and dirty command line file editor. There's also VI and Vim and all kinds of other options. But Nano I like because it works a lot like Notepad. It's very easy for new people to get used to how it works. The file that we need to modify is located in etc samba and the smb.conf file. This controls how Samba's shares are described and run. Now you can see this file is heavily commented. There's a complete configuration available for just about everything already in here. If you wanted to, you can go through and just uncomment the parts that you do or don't need. All we're worried about just to create our simple share is with the workgroup option. Now this doesn't have to match what your existing workgroup is. However, it will make it easier to show up in the network neighborhood. Right here I just left it at the default workgroup because that's what my default workgroup is. The server string is the description of what the machine actually says. It's its name. That's how it will show up in the network neighborhood. You can leave this as the default. It'll be the same thing as your host name that you set the machine to during the install process. The rest of these options we don't need to really worry about. You have an interfaces option. This will let us bind the Samba service to a specific network card or a specific IP address if we need to. By default, though, it's going to listen on all the interfaces, which for our simple configuration is just fine. We can skip the rest as the defaults are all going to be fine. You can see there's a lot to this. If you wanted to dig through here, by all means, feel free. Printing, I don't have a printer hooked up to this machine. It's just a virtual machine, so I'm not actually using any of it, so I've left it all commented. Lots and lots of user options, security. These are example shares that have been set up. Sharing a CD-ROM, we don't need that. Here we go. This is our first share. Now this won't normally be in the end of your config file. It will just end. It will just be blank at the end. The first option you're going to have here in brackets, this is the name of the share. Now I've called it cookies because I like sharing cookies. The comment is going to be whatever you want to call it. It could be cookies, you could say yum, you could say I like cookies. It doesn't really matter. It's just a description for it that will show up in the network neighborhood if you want to look at that. The path is the actual directory on the system that is going to be shared. This is where the files will actually reside. This could be an existing directory, or in this case, we're going to create a directory to share these files out of. Browsable, yes, because we want to be able to actually browse the share. We don't just want to assume it's there. Normally, you want to have this option enabled. Guessed OK, we're going to say yes because for this initial configuration, we're setting up a passwordless share. This is just an open share people can save files to, copy files off of, and that's it. Read only no because we want to be able to write there. Writable, yes. and create mask. These numbers specify file permissions. Now, I'm not going to get into that for the purposes of this demonstration. We can cover that in another episode if there's interest. But 755 is a good default option for read and write permissions on those shares. The valid users option, I have this commented for now because later we're going to set up a passworded share using my user Bob. But I didn't want to have to just redo it from scratch, so it's commented out for the purposes of here. So this is not actually going to be used. So you can modify this file however you like. You can use my path for cookies, but you can use obviously your own path. Now once we have our changes made, we're going to hit Control-X. I didn't make any changes to the file, so it's not going to prompt me. But normally it would say, do you want to save the changes to this file? You hit Y, it'll save your changes. Now that that's done, we need to have Samba read these changes. To do that, we need to reload it. So we're going to say sudo restart SMBD. Now the Samba service has been restarted with the changes that we've made. So if everything works okay, we should be able to browse our virtual machine. I'll bring it over here. So you can see, there's my virtual machine name, and here's our share. Now we're trying to open it, it's not going to do anything because that directory we created doesn't actually exist. And there's the error for that. So we're going to go back, and now we need to create that directory. To do that, we're going to use the mkdir command. And unless you're doing this in your home directory, we're going to need to use sudo. So we're going to say sudo mkdir back cookies. Now we have our whoopsie. I don't know if I spell it right. Now we have a directory called cookies. Now we need to set some permissions on this directory, otherwise Samba still won't be able to read it. So what we're going to do is use the chown command. This changes the ownership of files and directories in the system. We're going to say nobody, no group, and the directory that we want to apply these permissions to. Again, for us, just a regular old directory that we're going to be dropping files to, just into, and copying them out of. These default permissions will be just fine. Now that we've got that set up, we should be able to browse the directory. There we go. So now we have a directory. We can create things in that directory. Do as we see fit. Delete that. Yes, delete it. And that gives us just a simple directory that we can copy files to and out of. That's going to conclude this initial part. We're going to do a second part in just a moment here with a password protected share. So I will look forward to talking to you here in just a second once I get that set up. Thank you.